Nasza kolejna prezentacja to będzie prezentacja
Amistadi, a difficult name, from Bologna, and the topic architectural transfiguration of
będzie mówił o pan Amistadi, będziemy o architektonicznej transfiguracji historii.
Thank you for the invitation.
Bardzo dziękuję Państwu za zaproszenie.
I will speak about this concept of transfiguration of the history,
koncepcji transfiguracji historii.
showing one project made together with Luciano Semerani almost 20 years ago. Luciano Semerani was a great professor in the UAV University. What does it mean, transfiguration? Transfiguration means to transform something in something else, and especially to transform something, in this case, sad and tragic, in something happy or better. This is the transfiguration. Maybe you know the poem by William Shakespeare, The Tempest, when the body of the dead father fell down in the deep of the oceans, was transfigurated into something rich and strange. The bones became corals, and the eyes became pearls. This is the transfiguration. In this case, the transfiguration is the transfiguration of the history, of the tragic history of the First Great War in the north of Italy. The first step of this transfiguration of the history is the figurativization. Yeah, figurativization is one concept taken in the narratology, in the discursive level, used, for example, in the fairy tale, yeah, when you have to express one abstract meaning into something concrete. For example, in the fairy tale, the lion is always brave. If you have to express the smart, you use the figure of the fox. This is the figurativization. The landscape, the territory that we try to do this transfiguration is this valley in the north of Italy. One valley with plenty of signs of the war, because this was one territory on the boundary between Italy and Kaisertum, the Österreich Kaisertum. Yeah. So there is plenty of signs. The signs are gallery, forts, bunkers, trenches, a lot of scars in the soil. But all these signs are spread and sprawled without a system. So the figurativization is the idea to put in this chaos one narrative system. Yeah? Yeah. But what is the problem? The problem is that this is a landscape without building. It is one open territory, and the problem is to recognize something in this territory, in this fragmented landscape. To recognize something in something is one operation that reminds us to, for example, the speculative invention by Leonardo da Vinci. Maybe you know this invention by Leonardo da Vinci that say that if you find one spot, one blur in the wall, you can recognize something, yeah? For example, you can recognize one animal. It is the same when we recognize ships in the cloud, or something like this, yeah? Because, of course, it is different to recognize one urban blocks on quarters in the city. But it's in an open landscape, it is more difficult. So you have to find out one external reference. So the figures are one external reference. I do the example. For example, this is the territory with a lot of signs. This work, this is a fort. One of the help that can help us in the figurativization, for example, is the toponomastic, the name of the things. For example, we discovered that the name of this hill is the hill of the horse. Yeah? and the name of this fort is Fort of the Horn. And so, for example, we can recognize, like the kids, in these figures, we can recognize one back of the horse here. We can recognize the leg, yeah. And so this, without meaning, landscape became this narrative system where the heel of the horse became the figure of the horse, and where, for example, this fort, what the name is, the Fort of the Horn, became the skull of the bull. Yeah, so this is the narrative system that we call the places, yeah, and figures. This is the figurativization. So the figure in this semiotic, for example, is very famous, very important, Algirdas Gremas. Algirdas Gremas was one pupil of de Saussure. Yeah? This is post-structuralist semiotic, where between the deep level of the deep structure of the type and the shape, there is this middle level. This is the level of the figure. Yeah. It is the same. This is the fragment, the sign of the fort. Yeah. Before the restoration and after the restoration. This is not Italian. Yeah. This is the fort of the Österreich Kaisertum, because I am born here. I am not so completely Italian. In any case, this is the shape after the restoration, and we can recognize the head of the bull, the skull of the bull. And so Luciano Semerani invented this transfiguration where this symbol of the fort became one sculpture. This is interesting sketches by him, yeah, because it is all the transfiguration, starting from the first shape, do this intentional shape until this cubist end sculpture. And we put the sculpture with the one helicopter on high, 50-meter high hill. It was funny because the helicopter was one animal, because it was one super puma, one puma. Yeah. The second operation of this transfiguration is the transfiguration had another concept inside, very important, the estrangement. Because, of course, if you transform something in something else, you go out from the familiar things into something a bit strange. What is this concept of estrangement? Estrangement means that you have to, when you get used in something, that thing miss value, lose value, and you renew it, transfigurating it. For example, this is one famous cases, because imagine this is maybe one of the most powerful example of estrangement, because Mauro Condusi was the first one that in Venice introduced one white facade, because before him there was all the city was dark and made by brick. Yeah, Mauro Condusi came from the mountain, yeah, from Bergamo, and introduced this idea of this strange white facade in one dark by brick Venice. I did the same, my smaller occasion and smaller context, but I did the same because inside the trench of the First War, of course, the trench was the place of the burners to get bored, to get sad. Yeah, I introduced this white stone in one wood made by dark and brown trees. And so, of course, I transfigurated the trench into one garden, one stone garden. Here, it is not missing because the manager of the municipality asked me why I missed some stones. I didn't forgot, but it was the place for the blueberry, my idea. So yeah, this is this estrangement Bertolt Brecht used, for example, in the theater with Verfremdungseffect. Estrangement is one concept invented by a great expert of literature in Russia, was Viktor Shklovsky. Yeah? Viktor Shklovsky invented the concept in the 1917. To make the familiar seem strange or new, forcing the reader to perceive reality in a new way. So the trench became a garden. This is a very interesting book. This is by Viktor Shklovsky, Art as Device. Estrangement is one of these devices. And then we studied all the fort, the fort of the horn, with this sequence of narrative sequence of rooms. In every of these rooms, we transfigurated the previous story in something new, thinking, for example, to the kids, not necessarily good kids, maybe bad kids, but in any case for the kids. For example, the place where was in the original function, the carrier pigeons became doves of peace. Yeah? And this is the sketches by Luciano Semerani of the doves. This is a bit, this is normal transfiguration. This is more going to back to the cubist expression. Or for example, another interesting transfiguration was the transfiguration of the soldiers to uniforms, yeah? Because another important thing is that, you know, the first great war was one war when the soldiers was considered numbers, yeah? Was considered as not human being. And for example, a lot of work of art in that period reflected about this dehumanization of the soldiers. So we put in the place of the troops, in the dormitory, we imagined to put, because we didn't realize this, just the uniform of the soldiers. For example, one of the most strong reflection about this concept was made by Duchamp in the 9 maleized molds, yeah, where the people was considered molds, stamp. Yeah? Or for example, another topic of the First Great War was the loneliness of the soldiers that always had with the picture of the girlfriend. Yeah. Another transfiguration is to mortar to telescope. So that is the exact calculation of the scientists to produce that. Yeah. We transfigure into exact calculation to see the astronomy, to see the stars. Yeah. So the calculation, this is one picture, original picture inside the fort. This is the original object, tool for the death, and we transform it in one telescope. At the same way, we transform the normal trees in photovoltaic trees to produce energy. Another famous, one of the most famous example of transfiguration was made by Friedrich Schinkel, you know, where transformed the stars world into one exact arrangement of geometrical stars. Yeah, we projected to do the same in the vault, on the iron vault of this artillery room here. Yeah. For example, in the fort, several rooms was occupied by the gunpowder, yeah, by the gunpowder. So we imagine to substitute the gunpowder in colored powder where the kid can play with the powder. Yeah? So this is transfiguration, it's gunpowder, colored powder. In this fort, there is, of course, the mortuary. Yeah, this is the mortuary. But we imagine that the place, the final destination of the soldiers, became the place where the uniform of the soldiers was printed, was stamped. So the mortuary became, in this transfiguration, one mold, one matrix of the soldier that the war sent to die by the institutions. So it is the recovery of Fort Corner is a poetic, didactic, and museographic reaction machine. Is based on the identification and characterization of a series of stations which scenographically evoke the action for which these sites were intended within the military machine, transferring the themes to the symbolic plane through analogies and metaphors of the objective and practical dimension of the original use. The history of the specific interconnection present in local force between the engineering of world wars, construction, technology, and the evolution of military tactics and strategies, and the other become poetically transfigurated. Thank you.